Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more Socrates. We're going to be diving into the end of the argument today. We are going to receive the judgment and what Socrates says about the judgment. So let's go ahead and just dive in to the end of the apology. We're going to go back ahead and read this last bit from last time, right? Far from it, for I believe in them men of Athens as none of my accusers believe, and I commit to you and to the God my cause to be judged in whatever way may be best for me and for you. And so he is submitting himself to the judgment of the people of Athens, the men of Athens specifically, for judgment on whether or not he is leading the youth into impiety. And he is convicted. They come back. It is a close vote. Not as close as he would like, because then he could impose charges on one of the guys. But he he almost escapes the sentence, but he does not. He is sentenced to death. And now we are going to hear his response to the citizens of Athens in response to being sentenced to death. There are many reasons, men of Athens, why I am not troubled by this outcome. That by this outcome that you voted to convict me, and what has happened is not unexpected. But I am much more surprised at the number of votes on each side, for I never thought the difference in votes was going to be so small. I thought it would be larger. But now it seems if a mere 30 votes had gone the other way, I would have been acquitted. In fact, even as it stands, I think I have escaped Miletus, and not only escaped him, but it is obvious to anyone that if Anytus and Lycon had not come forward to accuse me too, he would have even been fined 1,000 drachmas for not securing 1/5 of the votes. So, this man proposes the death penalty for me, so be it. What alternative penalty shall I propose to you, men of Athens? Obviously, it should be a penalty I deserve. What then? What do I deserve to suffer or pay out? All because I did not live a quiet life and cared not for what most people care for? Money making, affairs of the household, military rank, political status, public office in general, and the alliances and factions that arise in the city? In fact, I thought myself too fair minded to survive any involvement in any of this. So I did not go where I was to be of no benefit to yourselves or to myself. I went instead to each person individually, where I was going to confer the greatest benefit possible, as I declare, by trying to persuade each of you to care, first and foremost, for himself rather than anything that belongs to himself, so that he might be as good and as wise as possible to care for the city itself before anything that belongs to the city, and to care for everything else in like manner. So, what should happen to me for being this sort of person? What do I deserve? Something good, men of Athens. That if I must propose a penalty based on what I truly deserve, and it should be good in a way that is appropriate for me. Well, what is appropriate for a poor man? A benefactor who needs leisure in order to exhort you? There's nothing more appropriate, men of Athens, than free meals in the Prytaneon. That is far more appropriate for me than it is for anyone who wins at the Olympic Games with a horse or 2 horses or 4 horses. For while he makes you seem to be blessed, I make you blessed in reality. And while he has no need of sustenance, I need it. So, if I must propose a penalty I justly deserve, this is what I propose: free meals in the Prytaneon. Now, perhaps when I say this, you think I am speaking defiantly, in much the same way as I spoke about recourse to pity and to pleading. But this is not the case, men of Athens. Rather, I am convinced that I am never intentionally wronged anyone. But I am not convincing you of this because we have had such a short time to discuss it. Since, in my opinion, if you had a law, as other peoples do when a death penalty is involved, not to judge the case in a single day, but over several days you would be convinced. But it is not easy now to dispel these mighty slanders in such a short time. So, being convinced that I have not wronged anyone else, I cannot possibly wrong myself and say that I deserve something bad and propose such a penalty for myself. Why should I? For fear of suffering the penalty Miletus proposes? When I have said I do not know if it is good or bad? Or should I select an alternative that I know quite well to be bad and propose that instead? What about imprisonment? But why should I live in prison? In slavery to the officials who hold office at the time? The 11? Or what about a fine and imprisonment until I pay it? But in my case, this is the same as the other suggestion, for I do not have money for which to pay the fine. Well then, I shall propose exile as the penalty. Indeed, you might well accept that for me. Yet I will be gripped by an intense love of life. Men of Athens, if I were so irrational that I could not figure out that while you, my fellow citizens, proved unable to tolerate my behavior and my arguments, and they become so burdensome and detestable to you that you are now seeking to be quit of them, other people, well, why would they tolerate them more readily? Far from it, men of Athens, and what a nice life I would have in exile. A man of my age, moving from city to city, constantly being banished. For I know full well that wherever I go, the young people will listen to what I say, just as they do here. And if I drive them away, they themselves will persuade their elders to banish me. And if I do not drive them away, their fathers and relations will banish me for their sakes. Now, someone might say, Socrates, if you kept quiet and lived a quiet life, wouldn't you be able to live on once we had cast you out? The most difficult thing of all is to convince some of you on this issue. For I say that this would constitute disobedience to the God. And that is why I cannot hold my peace. You do not believe me, as you think I am not in earnest. And if I go on to say the highest good for man is to engage in discourse every day about excellence, and on other issues on which you have heard me discoursing and examining myself and others, and that for a human being an unexamined life is not worth living, you are even less convinced by what I say. But although that is how matters stand, and as I declare, gentlemen, it is not easy to convince you. Besides, I am not used to the idea that I deserve anything bad. If I had money, I might have proposed as large a fine as I could afford to pay, for that would have done me no harm. But at the moment, I do not have the money, unless, of course, you propose such a fine as I am able to pay. I might be able to pay you 1 mina of silver. So I am proposing this amount, but men of Athens, Plato, here, Crito, and Christopolis, and Adopolos, and Apollodorus, are encouraging me to propose 30 mina. They will act as sureties. So I propose that amount, and they will be your sureties for the money. They are trustworthy. Men of Athens, all to save a little time, you will be notorious and be accused of killing Socrates, a wise man, by those who wish to reproach this city. For people who wish to revile you will indeed say, I am wise, even if I am not. In any case, if you had waited a short while, you would have obtained this result of its own accord. For surely you see my age, that I am now at the late stage of life and close to death. I'm not saying this, not to all of you, but to those voted for my execution. And I also say to these very people, perhaps you think, gentlemen, I have been convicted by being at a loss for the sort of words that would have persuaded you, had I believed I should do and say anything at all to be acquitted of this charge. Far from it. I was indeed convicted by being at loss, not for words, though, but for audacity and shamelessness, and my unwillingness to address you with the sort of speeches you would have been most pleased to hear from me, lamenting and wailing and doing much else that I maintained as unworthy of me. But which of you are well used to hearing from others? But I did not think at the time that I should do anything unworthy of a free man because I was facing danger, nor do I now regret having defended myself in this way. No, I much prefer to die after this defense than live on after the other one. For neither in court nor on the battlefield should I or anyone else contrive to evade death at all costs. In fact, it often becomes obvious in battle that a man may escape death by throwing away his arms and turning to his pursuers and begging for mercy. And there are many other ways to avoid death. And when faced with various dangers, provided a man has the audacity to do so, or to say anything. But the difficulty, gentlemen, is not to escape death. No, it is much more difficult to escape wickedness, for that runs faster than death. And now, since I am slow and old, I have been caught by the slow runner, while my accusers, being clever and sharp, have been caught by the faster one, evil. And now I shall depart, sentenced by you to death, while they will depart, sentenced by truth to degeneracy and injustice. And I abide by my penalty, and so do they. Perhaps, too, this is somehow the way things had to be, and I think it is all in due measure. Next, I wish to make a prophecy to those of you who voted to condemn me, for I am now at the stage where men prophesy most of all when they are going to die. For I declare, you gentlemen who have slain me, that immediately after my death you shall meet with a far more grievous punishment, by Zeus, than the death sentence you have imposed upon me. For you have done this now, believing that you will avoid giving account to your life. But I am telling you, the very opposite will happen. You will have far more people holding you to account. People whom I have restrained until now, although you've been unaware of this. And as they are younger, they will be more severe. And you will be more troubled. Or if you think that by killing people you will prevent anyone from reproaching you for not living aright, your thinking is flawed. For this particular means of escape is neither entirely effective, nor is it noble. But the noblest and easiest way is not to put other people down, but to make yourself as good as you can possibly be. With these prophetic words, I take my leave of those of you who have voted to condemn me. But I would love to converse about what has happened to those who voted to acquit me, whilst the officials are busy. And before I go to the place where I must die, please wait with me, gentlemen, for as much time as we are allowed. Since there is nothing to prevent us from talking to one another, to you who are my friends, I wish to explain the exact significance of what has happened to me just now. In fact, gentlemen, judges, for you may properly be called judges, something extraordinary has happened to me. For the familiar prophecy of the demon has always been completely constant throughout my life, opposing me on even the most trivial issue, if I was about to do anything incorrectly. But now, as you see, something has happened to me, which may be thought and is generally believed to be the worst of evils. Yet, the God sign did not oppose me as I left my home this morning, nor as I was coming up here to the court. Nothing, nor in anything was I was going to say in my speech. And yet, in other discussions, it has stopped me in many places while I was still speaking. But now it has not opposed me at all in this matter, not in a single word or deed. So, what do I suppose is the explanation for this? I shall tell you. In fact, it is likely that what has happened to me is actually something good. And those of us who suppose that death is something bad cannot be right to think so. I have strong evidence for this, for the familiar sign would undoubtedly have opposed me unless I was embarking upon a good course of action. So, correction for myself from the first one, right? I thought that his demon was acting in opposition of his good. It was actually acting in accordance with his good. That was my misunderstanding. So I can't go back and change that there, but I can acknowledge that here. And that was me misinterpreting this then, right? When I read through it the first time, that was what I took away from it. I was wrong. But this demon, like, this was what his parents had consecrated him to. They made a covenant for this demon to be with him and guide him. I thought that it was like the monkey's paw, where it's actually the opposite of the intended effect that happens, but he figured out how to make it work. But no, I'm wrong. There was a deal with an entity, and it led him in the proper course of actions. But we may also consider as follows: how great is the hope that death is good? For death is one of the two things. Either it is like being nothing, and the dead have no awareness of anything, or, as we are told, it is a change and a relocation of the soul from this place here to another place. And if it is indeed an absence of awareness like a sleep, in which the sleeper does not even behold a dream, then death would be a wonderful boon. Suppose someone had to select that night where he slept beholding no dream, and compare the other days and nights of his own life to that one, and say, on reflection, how many days and nights more pleasant than that one had he ever lived throughout his life, during his life? There would, I believe, be so few that a common citizen, or even the great king himself, would find the calculation difficult. And indeed, if death is like this, I'll say it's a boon. For in that case, its entire duration is apparently no longer than a single night. But if, on the other hand, death is like making a journey from here to another place, and what is said is true, that all those who have died are actually there, what greater good could there be than this? Gentlemen, my judges. For if anyone arriving in Hades is quit of those self-proclaiming judges and finds the true judges, who are said to give judgment there, Minos, Radamanthus, Radamanthus, Asius, and Triptolemus, and any other demigods who are righteous throughout their own lives, would that be an ordinary journey? Or again, wouldn't any of you give anything to meet with Orpheus, Musaeus, Hesiod, and Homer? Indeed, I am willing to die again and again, repeatedly, if this is all true. For I myself would have a wonderful time there, comparing my own experiences with theirs. Whenever I met up with Palamedes and Ajax, the son of Telamon, and any of the other old men of old who died because of an unjust judgment, I think that would be enjoyable. And indeed, most important would be to examine the people there, just like the people here, and find out who among them is wise, and who thinks that he is when he is not. Gentlemen, judges, wouldn't anyone give anything to examine the man who led the massive army at Troy, or Odysseus, or Sisyphus, or countless others one could mention, men and women alike, to engage in discourse with them, associate with them, and examine them, would be an absolute blessing. At any rate, the people there certainly do not execute people for such behavior. For in general, they are more blessed than those here. And at that stage, they are immortal for all time, if what is said is actually true. But you too, gentlemen, judges, should be hopeful in the face of death, and hold this one precept as true. Nothing bad comes to a good man, either during his life or after death, nor are his affairs neglected by the gods. Nor have my present circumstances come about by accident. Rather, It is obvious to me that at this stage it is better for me to die and be quit of troubles. That is why the sign did not deter me, and why I am not at all angered by those who voted against me, or by my accusers. And yet, this was not what they had in mind when they voted to condemn me or accused me. No, their intentions was to harm me, and for this they deserve criticism. Well, I ask this much of them. When my sons are of age, punish them, gentlemen, with the same afflictions as I inflicted upon you. If you think they are caring for money or anything else before excellence, or if they think they are something when they are nothing, censure them as I have censured you, because they care not for what they ought, and they think they amount to something when they are worth nothing. And if you do this, myself and my sons will have received just treatment at your hands. But now it is time to depart, I to die, you to live. And which of us goes to the better lot is unknown to anyone but God. I absolutely love this part of this argument. There is so much that I stand in alignment with that I'm not even going to stop. I didn't even want to stop the discourse because I could be saying this. It is better for me to die alone on my morals, knowing that I am right in what I do, as far as I can understand it, than it is to bow and plead and beg. It's the one thing I can do. The only time I surrender is to God. And I do. You may have stumbled across this, and chances are that if you're here right now, you stumbled across this and it struck a chord with you. And you don't know me, right? Maybe you just found me here. You can know this about me. I do what my God tells me to do. Every bit as much as Socrates did what his God told him to do, I do what my God told me to do. And so I'm doing a Bible study where I talk about a lot of things that are not conventional. I talk about entities and how you can make allegiance with entities. I talk about sacrifices, and I talk about standing for good, and I talk about all of those things, all before I read really anything of Socrates. I went through the hard work of sitting down and working these things out for myself. I sat down and deep dove into my own mind, because that is what I do. And I asked myself the questions. Well, why do you believe this? Is this what actually is recorded? Do you actually have the accurate representation of what you believe? And so I started my Bible study. Already different than where most people are, and I'm in a whole different place now than I was. But I am much closer to Socrates. I walk this line much closer today than I ever did. Socrates willingly went to his death in order that truth would not be perverted. He could have bribed his way out. He could have lied his way out. He could have pled his way out. He could have begged his way out. Those were options. He could have recanted everything he ever stood for and went and lived in a cave somewhere. He could have done that. He could have went to another land and tried to make a way there. But he couldn't do that. I resonate more with Socrates than possibly anybody alive today. And that's crazy, right? Because we're separated by such a vast gulf of time. But the mind of man really hasn't changed. Our capacity to understand has, because the things we have to understand has changed. There were no light bulbs in the time of Socrates. It would have been hard to explain electricity and the flow and the generation and the movement of protons. Although I think he would have got it more than most. The concept that he was dealing with was bringing people out of the the multi-theism and more into line with the deism that God is. God is all things, and all things are God. When I look at you, I see my God, not because you are God, but because you are made in the image of God. And so is that cat laying on my bed right there. Everything in the world, in the universe, is created in the image of God. It is within the image of God, and it is in the image of God. And you are the image of God. I know that I'm rambling a little bit from the intention of Socrates, but like this deal with a demon and the entity that guides him, that's a real thing. Now, I don't know the specifics of how that went about, and I don't deal with entities, right? That is not where my comfort level lies. Some people are comfortable with that, and if you are aligned with the 8 laws of creation, you're probably going to be okay doing it. But I don't deal with that because that's not where my comfort lies. But it's possible. I do know that what we think we know and what we have been taught is a lie. And that the things that are described in these works that we're only just now beginning to go through, like I came to this from Critias and Timaeus because I was investigating Atlantis, and I believe that that was possible. Not only possible, but highly likely. And so I don't come at it from the same angle other people do. Like, people look at this scholarship and they're like, okay, this is obviously fake. There are no gods, but this is a logical argument. I don't look at it like this. I look at this as a man standing on God, and he is actually standing on the correct one. And so I identify with this on a very, very fundamental level. The call is for us all to be the best that we can be. The sin of which he was guilty was for expecting not only for you to do what you say you're going to do, but what you should do. You know very well within yourself what is holding you back from being what you want to be. You know very well the thing that is dragging you down. You should choose that. Now, he pointed out truth in a manner that people didn't find digestible, because he would say, okay, well, this is your argument. What about this? And then they would have to defend that. And if your argument is indefensible, you get mad. Like, you start getting the big emotions because you know something in your life is about to change. And so you get that anger, you get sadness, or whatever it is you happen to feel, that some paradigm that you've believed is shifting in a fundamental way. Coming to the realization of the one God is like that. Coming to realize that there aren't a multitude of gods out there. There is but a simple, single, all things God who created all things. And he doesn't govern the minutiae of your life, but rather instead judges you on your service to him and your willingness to serve him. Because when you ask for forgiveness and you change your life to his, that is what is happening. You're devoting your life to service to him. Socrates devoted his life to the service of his God. He was assigned to do this in Athens. And if he deviated even slightly from that, then he risked the displeasure of God. What is man to that? What is the condemnation? What can you do to me that is worse than what my God can do? What is worse to me? There is no piece of me that you can torture that is equal to me betraying my God. That's where I stand. That's where I hope I am strong enough to stand. And one day it may be required of me because the things I am doing in that Bible study, a lot of people are not going to like. But I have to stand on the truth every single bit as much as Socrates had to stand on his. And if it leads to my entire destruction, so be it. And that's where I'm going to wrap this one up. To the crew, or hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much in confusion to a somewhat difficult topic. There were more places I could have stopped and discussed this. And if you would like me to discuss more things about this, then we can. But most of what I want to discuss in this particular argument is repeated in the discussions, and we will be able to slow down and talk about them there because those are going to take a while. There's a lot to go through. But they are all worth learning from. I don't know that I can get it. I don't know that I can deliver all of them in a way that will be entertaining enough, right? It's hard enough to get people involved in this. Well, y'all don't see it. Hold on. Involved in this. Because I'm just reading from this. I'm not trying to pull in some fancy graphics. Maybe one day I'll be able to hire somebody to do that, but that is way down on my stack. That SI crap, nope. I'm just barely SE available, right? So that SI, get all of the exact proper references, it drives me nuts. I would rather just sit here and talk and share the text with you and discuss what's in the text. And that's just the format I'm going to go with. There may be some pop-ins and a few little things, but it's really not my forte. I'm here to talk to you about the issues, and I'm here to talk to you about what it really means and how we can use the lessons found in all the various texts that we are going to go through to make ourselves be who we want to be. I don't ever want to change anyone. I want to help you to find the tools to change yourself into who you want to be. Because there is a purpose for your life. It is written just for you, and it is just for your good. But you are free to not choose it. I hope you choose it, and I hope I give you the tools to choose it. That is why we do this. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. The one true God loves you, and you are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. This has been Pitt's Take. Peace.